Hi, and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today is the 20th of July. We're on page 54 of the magazine, and we're looking at Mosaics through time, and we're in the second half of the article. In the first one, we're kind of talking about what mosaics are and that they're actually pretty old. They're actually like a 5,000 or probably older, but the oldest we found so far is 5,000-year-old art form. And different cultures have invented it differently, but some of them there's kind of a continuous sort of passing on of it, like the Mesopotamians, which is the Mediterranean culture, and then the Greeks and Romans also did it, and then later on the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims all did it because it's kind of like a continuous artistic tradition after about 1000 BCE, I would say. But today we're going to talk about the specifics of each of the more modern mosaic traditions. We're going to look at what each culture kind of does with what do they depict with their mosaics.
好，所以昨天的文章我们谈到了这个 Mosaics 在西方世界它大概哪些地方可以找得到，还有时代是怎么样也谈到了在玛雅文化里面也有 Mosaics， 而且它是独立发展的。好，那今天呢我们继续这个历史与艺术的邂逅马赛克这个文章。好，那今天要谈的是不同的马赛克，他们里面主要会处理什么样的素材等等的问题。
Okay, so mosaics come in all different shapes and forms. Here are just a few of the many different varieties throughout the ages. Greek and Roman mosaics. The mosaics of both the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire often featured mythological subjects like gods and goddesses, as well as creatures such as nymphs and centaurs. Scenes that depicted hunts and other pursuits were common. These mosaics often had large borders of geometric patterns. Islamic mosaics. New laws following the arrival of Islam led to a shift away from figurative mosaics in the Middle East. Instead, they gave rise to the complex geometric designs that are characteristic of Islamic mosaics. Aside from these intricate repeating patterns, Islamic mosaics also feature animals, plants, trees, and flowers. Christian and Byzantine mosaics. Christian mosaics began to emerge during the Roman Empire, but it was in the Byzantine Empire, which lasted from the 4th to the 15th century, that the artwork truly flourished. These mosaics depicted biblical figures such as saints and angels. Many of them were made with the usual tiles found in other mosaics, but several other unique styles can be seen. Some mosaics were made with shining gold tiles, while others featured miniature religious icons made up of small clay tiles that measured a millimeter or less. Modern mosaics. Some of the most famous modern mosaics are by Antonio Gaudi, a Catalan architect. Mosaics he designed at a public park in Barcelona aren't standard images of people or patterns, nor are they just on walls or ceilings. Gaudi's mosaics cover statues and benches. They also have a more chaotic design with no pattern, but rather a spray of color. Actually, you know the word in English, gaudy, G-A-U-D-Y, meaning like kind of cheap and over-colorful, comes from Gaudi. Like,
really?
Because at the time, not everyone was really in love with his style, and they were like, these look cheap and stupid, so we would do it like, if they saw something cheap and stupid, they'd be like, oh, that's like Gaudi. And then it just turned into a gaudy pattern.
所以英文这个 G-A-U-D-Y 这个字它就是很俗的这个可能很 showy 看起来好像花花绿绿的，可是其实很怂那种感觉。这个是其实来自于这个 Gaudi 那所以蛮有趣的，因为那个曾经有一段时间就很多人就觉得Gaudi的东西看起来就是很 gaudy 所以蛮有趣的这样一个字源。
They thought it was crude. It wasn't nearly as beautiful as the other stuff of the Jugendstyle at the time.
他们觉得Gaudi的东西呢蛮粗的所以慢慢就衍生成为我们刚刚讲那个 Gaudi 这个字。
Yeah. But now Gaudi is very popular, so it's kind of hard to see the connection.
Yeah, 这个也许艺术品味不同了。
Yeah, kind of. I think because now we've gone through modern art, so we can see it differently. Okay, so mosaics come in all different shapes and forms, and you're not kidding. Here are just a few of the many different varieties throughout the ages. So we're going to tell you about just a few of the kinds that you can see.
好，所以 mosaics come in 就是 be available in 就是有的意思。好，所以 mosaics 有怎么样 all different shapes and forms 有各种各样不同的形状和形式。那 here are just a few 现在这里只是几个 of the many 在那很多的 different 不同的 varieties 种类或者变化，在这里指的当然是 mosaics 的种类跟变化 throughout the ages 自古以来。好，所以这里只是自古以来各种各样不同的马赛克里面的其中的几个。好 Here are just a few of them.
So let's talk Greek and Roman mosaics. Because Greeks and Romans, the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans were really two separate cultures, but because the Romans really sort of worshipped the Greeks in a way and took so much of their culture on and made it their own that it becomes kind of a continuous culture. There's a lot that's similar about these two cultures, so they often get lumped together.
好，所以他说呢，这个 the mosaics of both 好，这个 the Greek Empire 好，还有这个 the Roman Empire。那刚刚这个 Angel 老师讲说，其实希腊跟罗马是两个不同的文化，但是因为这个罗马帝国呢，他非常的这个可以说是喜欢或敬仰这个希腊帝国哈，所以他有很多东西都跟希腊帝国是一脉相承的，所以现在很多时候我们就会把他们两个统统放在一起。
And so the mosaics of both the Greek and the Roman Empire often featured mythological subjects. Mythological means having to do with old stories, like gods and goddesses, as well as creatures such as nymphs and centaurs, because both the Greek and the Roman empires were deeply into their mythology stories. They loved their stories about the gods and goddesses, and they put them in everything. It was like the soap operas of the time, and they put them in so much of their art.
好，所以呢，我们刚刚讲到这个希腊帝国跟罗马帝国他们的 mosaics 通常或者常常 often 经常 featured 以什么为特色呢？ mythological subjects 就是神话的主题那当然我们知道希腊神话罗马神话是这个欧洲文明的一个起源所以他们会把他们神话的主题例如说 gods 就是男神还有 goddesses 女神放在上面。那这个地方像其实所谓的希腊罗马神话里面的 gods 跟 goddesses， 你说讲到宙斯大家都很熟那或者是爱神这个等等的还有像这个其他的Athena 等等的这些神还有女神会变成他们的 mosaics 的主题。那 as well as 同时也有 creatures 一些生物例如说 nymphs 这些希腊神话罗马神话里面常常出现的这种仙女，或者是 centaur 就是这个半人马那所以主要就是希腊罗马神话里面这些主题这些故事。
And then scenes that depicted hunts and other pursuits were common. So they also liked to make pictures of their favorite things to do, one of which was hunting animals. And, all the various things that men like to do.
OK, 好，所以 scenes 就是场景那这场景怎么样 ？That 这个场景是 depicted 描述 hunts 就是狩猎还有呢 other pursuits 还有其他的追捕、追逐等等的那这些场景呢 were common 也很常见。
So these mosaics often had large borders of geometric patterns. So they often had, it was like a picture in the middle and a very thick border. And another feature of them is that they basically had white backgrounds because the point was to depict things. So you don't want a colored background to make it harder to see. So they tended to have white background and like dark lines.
所以这些 mosaics often 常常有很大的 large 的边界borders 而且是怎么样？这边界是怎么样？是几何图案的边界geometric 就是这个几何的 patterns 图案那他们还有一个就是刚刚 Angela 有提到，他们的背景常常是白色的因为他要这个告诉你主题是什么所以简单的说就是它可能是个很大一片长方形然后里面有一些人物这样子。
Now, Islamic mosaics are a very different breed. It's a very different kind. New laws following the arrival of Islam led to a shift away from figurative mosaics in the Middle East. So the Middle East is like the eastern end of the Mediterranean, and the Greek and the Roman Empire encompassed the north and east of the Mediterranean, but at one point almost the entire Mediterranean. But now we're talking about the east of the Mediterranean, and there was a shift away from figurative mosaics. Figurative means showing people, showing animals. And so they stopped showing people and animals and started doing other things.
好，所以伊斯兰的马赛克呢，我们关于这一点我们讲到 new laws 就是新的法律或者新的律法 following 跟随着 the arrival of Islam 随着伊斯兰教的到达的来到所产生的或者是所跟来的这个新的法律或者律法呢 led to 导致了 a shift 一个转移 away from 这个转移是离开了 figurative mosaics 好 figurative 就是具象的例如说有具体形象例如说有人像神的像或者是动物的像等等像这种的 mosaics 那这个是 in the Middle East 在中东本来他们的 mosaics 是具象的 mosaics 好但是呢因为这个伊斯兰教的到达所以慢慢的就转移了就慢慢的他们就不做这种具象的马赛克了
And this was actually because of laws that were passed because Islam, it was forbidden to show Muhammad, to show any figure of Muhammad. He didn't want his picture being known. And so this kind of turned into you're not allowed to show any figures of any people at all.
好，那为什么会这样子呢？因为伊斯兰教它的律法就是他们不喜欢或者不允许你显示出这个穆罕默德的形象所以因为他们不让大家看到或者是不能在艺术里面弄出这个穆罕默德的形象所以换句话说慢慢的就延伸到其他领域所以他们的艺术呢就比较不喜欢有这种具象的东西
Instead, they gave rise to the complex geometric designs that are characteristic of Islamic mosaics. And when I say complex, I mean mind-blowingly complex. They would do these 3D, they're just like these 3D ceilings that are just hanging down. They look like caves, like stalactites, and they use the most incredible colors. So instead of this like white background with like red and black lines, now we have all of the colors. They're incredibly colorful and they're incredibly complicated and intricate.
好，所以呢，这个的确他们就是 they 指的就是伊斯兰的马赛克gave rise to 就是造就了使什么兴起了他们使得这个 the complex 就是很繁复很复杂的 geometric 几何的 designs 设计好那这些设计呢是怎么样是 are characteristic of 所谓 to be characteristic of 就是它是什么什么的特色所以这种很繁复的几何设计是伊斯兰马赛克的特色好那将这个Angela 老师他其实刚刚有给我看那些照片真的是非常漂亮你会觉得哇这些伊斯兰教他们怎么做出来马赛克这么的漂亮很有立体感而且是非常美的几何的图案所以非常不得了各位可以去这个网络上面找找看那个照片来看非常漂亮的那种几何图案非常繁复
The search term I would recommend is Islamic ceiling mosaic and then you'll get the best ones
所以各位可以找这个Islamic 然后 ceiling Mosaics 三个字你去这个 Google 就会找到很漂亮的图案
So besides these intricate, meaning very detailed and delicate, repeating, meaning they have the same pattern going over and over again. So aside from these intricate repeating patterns, Islamic mosaics often also feature animals, plants, trees, and flowers.
Aside from 就是除了这些 intricate 就是错综复杂的 repeating 会一直重复的 patterns 图案因为通常就是这些几何图案那这个伊斯兰的这些马赛克呢 also 也会 feature 他们也有特色是什么呢他们也会以什么为特色呢 animals 他们也会做动物 plants 植物 trees 树木还有 flowers 还有花
And then we have Christian and Byzantine mosaics. Christian mosaics began to emerge during the Roman Empire. So emerge means come out. So there's a few of them that we still have from during the Roman Empire period. But it was in the Byzantine Empire, which lasted from the 4th to the 15th century, that the artwork truly flourished. And I'm just going to say it's because around then the Christian church started to have more money. In the first 3 centuries, it was very poor and it was kind of hidden and it was illegal as a sect. So they're not going to have time to do a lot of art. But after the 3rd century, they start coming into their own as a religion and started having more money.
好， 所以呢，这个 Angela 说他觉得，因为他这里讲到他们从第4世纪到第15世纪开始这种艺术形式开始蓬勃发展啊。Angela 说这个可能是因为他们大概从第3世纪之后呢，这个基督教开始站稳脚跟了，所以那个时候像在拜占庭帝国的时候，他们就比较有钱可以做这些事情了也比较有闲。那我们来看到这个句子，他一开始讲说这个基督教的这种 Mosaics 开始 emerge 开始出现是在罗马帝国然后后面这个子句呢是一个强调性的句子 ，it was 什么什么什么 that 就一直要到什么时候 that 所说的事情才发生所以一直要到什么时候呢？一直要到这个拜占庭帝国的时候那拜占庭帝国呢，他说 lasted 它持续是从第4世纪到第15世纪，一直要到这一段期间呢 that 才怎么样？才发生了说这 the artwork 就是这种艺术形式呢 truly 真正的 flourished 真正的蓬勃发展。
So these mosaics depicted or showed biblical figures, so people from the Bible, such as saints and angels.
那这些 mosaics depicted 他们描述的是圣经里面的人物biblical figures， 例如说 saints 圣徒，还有 angels 天使。
So many of them were made with the usual tiles found in other mosaics, and like I said yesterday, a lot of them are in the similar style to the Greek and Roman Empire kind of mosaics. But several other unique styles can be seen. There's other stuff that's just unique to Christian and Byzantine mosaics.
好，所以 many of them 就这些基督教的这些 mosaics were made with 是用什么做的呢？是用 the usual 常见的 tiles 瓷砖 found in other mosaics， 所以他们用的材料跟其他的这个 mosaics 其他文化的 mosaics 差不多但是呢 several other 有几种其他的 unique 很独特的 styles 风格 can be seen 所以他们用的材料差不多，那如果材料差不多，可能做出来的东西可能看起来也蛮像的，但是他们也有一些很独特的风格。
So one of the issues is that Christianity started off as being like not state sanctioned, so everyone had to hide away in rooms. So everyone had the habit of having interior spaces to worship, but they kind of wanted to be outside because the traditional style of worship up till then was outside spaces. So an art professor explained it to us like this: they put gold tiles on the wall when they could afford it to bring light into the room to make them feel like they were outside.So that was my art professor's way of explaining this. And so some mosaics were made with shining gold tiles, or they were made of glass tiles that were coated with gold so that they were like the candlelight would shine off of them and make them feel like you're in this glowing golden space. And then other mosaics, as you got further and further into the Byzantine era, they started doing miniature religious icons. They're doing these faces, and sometimes these faces were so delicate that some of the clay tiles inside the face would be like a millimeter or less for like an eyebrow or something. So they got really, really good at piecing together faces.
好，所以呢，他说有一些 mosaics were made with 用什么做呢？用 shining 很闪亮的、很亮的 gold 金色的或者金的这个tiles 瓷砖那刚刚 Angela 讲说他以前这个艺术史的这个教授跟他讲说，跟他们说，因为基督教他们在敬拜上帝的时候呢，本来在室外，但是后来因为宗教压迫的关系等等，他们就到室内了。那但是他们希望在室内敬拜的时候也有在室外那种感觉所以他们会用一些很亮的好像金色的这种瓷砖呢，感觉起来就是把外面的这个光带到室内让他们觉得室内这个敬拜的环境也是充满了光明等等的好，所以他们会用这种材料来做，这是上一句讲的这个 unique styles。那 while others， 所以有一些是用很亮的这个瓷砖，那其他的呢 feature 的特色就是 miniature， 会有很微型的很缩小的 religious icons， 宗教的一些图标这个 icons。 那 icon 其实在东正教来讲的话，它其实可以指圣像那这些图标或图像或者这个圣像呢，是 made up of 有什么组成呢？有小的这个 clay tiles， 就粘土的瓷砖那这个小的粘土瓷砖呢，可能 measured 它的尺寸可能只有1毫米，或者甚至于不到1毫米所以是这个非常微型很缩小的这个一种艺术。
So then we have modern mosaics. And some of the most famous modern mosaics are by Antonio Gaudi, and he's a Catalan architect. Catalan is an area of Spain that's in the northeast of Spain. It's the area around Barcelona.
好，那有一些比较就是最有名的现代的 Mosaics 是由这个高第做的。那他是一个什么呢？是这个 Catalan 就是加泰罗尼亚的一个 architect， 一个建筑师。
So the mosaics that he designed at a public park in Barcelona called Park Güell, they aren't the standard images of people or pattern. They're not the usual kind of mosaics we've seen. Nor are they just on walls or ceilings. This nor here is saying it's not this and it's not that. So you could use neither nor, or here we just said they aren't this, nor are they that. So we're kind of using this as a pattern. So they're not just on walls or ceilings. They're everywhere. The whole park is like a giant mosaic, really.
那 Mosaics he designed 他设计的这个马赛克呢是在一个 public park 一个大众的公园在巴塞隆纳。那 aren't 这是否定的，第一个否定，他们不是 standard images， 不是那种标准的图像of people or patterns， 不是人标准的这种人的图像或者是一些图案的图像。nor 是跟前面那个 aren't 来的，两个都是否定，他们也不是 nor are they。那因为 nor 在这个子句开头，所以这个子句的主词动词要倒装所以变成 nor are they。他们也不是 just 光 on 在墙上或者在天花板上。
So Gaudi's mosaics cover statues and benches. They sort of flow over all the surfaces of the park.
所以他们这个高第他的 mosaics 会 cover 会覆盖雕像 statues 还有 benches 长凳感觉起来它其实就是覆盖整个这个你所看到的东西。
And he tends to use really primary colors like pure white, pure blue, pure red, pure yellow. And I think that's why I kind of don't like it. I feel like the colors are not subtle enough. They could be so much more subtle, but he liked the sort of really modern, contrasty colors.
好，那高第用的颜色通常都是单色的那也许就因为这样有的人觉得不是那么的漂亮但是这是它的特色。
And they also have a more chaotic design. Like most murals tend to be regular patterns and repeating patterns, and his are more chaotic is the nicest way to say it. They're irregular shapes with no pattern, but they're more like a spray of color or like an extension of it. So he uses mosaic kind of like painters use paint.
好，所以他用马赛克用法好像一个画家用颜料那种感觉那这一句他讲说他们就是他所做出来的 mosaics 也有一个比较 chaotic 就是混乱毫无章法的一个设计。那 with no pattern 没有模式没有图案，但是呢 rather 比较像是 a spray of color 就是一抹颜色。
So then, that's all we have for you on these patterns, but we have some questions, of course. And the questions are for both yesterday and today's part of the article. So number one is, when did religious mosaics first start to appear? And I think the key word here is religious.
好，所以宗教马赛克是什么时候开始出现的？
And the answer is, according to the article, D, the 4th century, when Christian mosaics started to show up.
好，所以答案是4世纪那个时候基督教的马赛克开始出现了。
And number two, what was a feature found in Roman mosaics?
在罗马的马赛克里面可以找到什么特色呢？
And the answer is B, creatures from myths, because the Romans loved their stories.
好，答案是 B, 神话中的生物。
And number three, according to the passage, which of the following statements is true?
根据本文下列哪一项叙述是正确的？
The answer is C. The architect Gaudi would often cover statues and benches in mosaics.
好，答案是 C. 建筑师高第他的马赛克范围经常涵盖雕像跟长凳。
And number four, what mosaic are you looking at if you visit a historic building and see artwork like the following pattern? Hint, there's lots of flowers here.
Yeah, 好，如果你造访一座历史建筑，而且看到类似下面图案的艺术品那你在看的是哪一种马赛克呢？
The answer is D, Islamic.
答案是 D, 伊斯兰马赛克，因为根据第二天文章的第3段，复杂的几何设计，这个是伊斯兰马赛克特有的。那除了这些错综复杂的重复图案之外呢，伊斯兰马赛克还会以动物、植物、树木和花卉为特色，所以我们要选 D。So
if you're interested in colors and if you're interested in pattern and you're interested in wall decoration, I highly encourage you to go and look up any of these eras of mosaics because you will be richly rewarded with some really beautiful pictures. So that's all we have for you today, though. Join us again tomorrow for more Ivy English. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.